Friends, let me just start with a top-line advertisement about the United States Chamber of Commerce. We believe, simply put, in the founder's vision of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And as Senior Vice President at the Chamber for South Asia, and also President of the United States-India Business Council, we work every day toward that credo of our founders. We have 200 member companies that operate in nearly every facet of human enterprise. We were founded in 1975 at the behest of both the United States and Indian governments with a single purpose of seeking to expand and intensify trade, investment, and business ties between the people of the United States and the people of India. We have a team in Delhi and in Washington that works every day unceasingly toward that goal. Why did I take up this role? I was having a perfectly fine career in the State Department, but one thing I realized when I was out in the embassy 2 years ago is that so much of what I had hoped to achieve in the strategic realm had been achieved. That in fact, if you look at the Quad, you look at our Indo-Pacific strategic convergence, our maritime, very clear maritime understandings about what we believe are our values of freedom of trade and commerce and navigation and a rules-based international order. If you look at our law enforcement, intelligence, military, diplomatic coordination, much of the strategic work of U.S.-India relations had largely been done. I had received the briefings of the entire embassy, and I thought, wow, we have exceeded my dreams of when I first started working at the embassy in India back in 2005. But what was interesting and clear is that while the steel skeleton of U.S.-India strategic and state-to-state relations had been achieved, there was still massive untapped potential in the economic business investment dimension of our relationship. And so I thought to myself, that's where the thrust vectoring needs to happen for us to get to a truly built-out relationship between the world's two greatest democracies. So I figured what better place than working with Nisha and friends at the U.S. Chamber to do that. Because friends, I believe if we attain that goal of $500 billion in trade between the United States and India, then it's going to be good for India, it's going to be good for America, it's going to be good for democracy, it's going to be good for the entire world. And so that is the goal of USIBC, and that's why I took up the job. I also believe that the commercial relations between our countries are going to help fuel India's rise to become a $30 trillion economy. If India attains that in this lifetime, and I pray every day for it, it will be so good for the people of this planet. So good, of course, for India. And the business ties are going to do that. They're going to fuel that more than anything else. Ours is a business relationship that is informed by a commitment to climate resilience, inclusive job creation, and is underpinned by trust. Someone mentioned the high trust ecosystem. That's the exact way to describe it. Was that you, Allie? Good man. That's one of the mantras we use, high trust ecosystem. Yeah, that's good. So, we have a really good vibe. I had a wonderful visit to India last week. In fact, I'm giving you this speech I arrived yesterday. It's 1:30 in the morning in India, so if I'm a little rough, you'll know why. But let's think for a minute about where we've been, because so many of these panelists have been talking about where we're going, but we've got to think about where we've been. Think about 1971, the year I was born. Absolute crisis year in U.S.-India relations, arguably the worst in U.S.-India relations. I think of all the trips I made to India as a kid where my cousins would talk about the evils of the American Empire. This was an era when our consulate, founded by George Washington in 1794, our consulate in Calcutta, the street in front of it was named Ho Chi Minh Sarani. And so you think of that era, and I lived it as a little boy, and you think about where we are today. Think about 1994 when I joined the Foreign Service. In that era, there was a list of countries for which we had the highest level of technology denial. So Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, a few others, and India. As an Indian American, I was shocked. But of course I was the low man on the totem pole, so I couldn't do anything about it. I first started working on India in 2000. I organized a meeting called Foreign Office Consultations between the Indian Foreign Secretary and my boss, the Undersecretary for Political Affairs. And I was the guy making sure the tea and the coffee were served and the talking points were prepared and all that. And the meeting happened, and let's just say that over 2.5 hours, there was not rancor, but there was definitely a tension in the discussions. So afterward, I went to my boss and I said, geez, boss, I'm so sorry. I clearly didn't bake this cake right. I don't know what to tell you. And he said, it's always like this with India and the US, don't worry about it. This was actually fine. You had tea on actual proper cutlery in China, and so you're a good guy, you're a good diplomat. So, as fate would have it, I pivoted off of working on Middle East and started working on India in 2005. I was posted to the embassy. And just a few days after I got there, President Bush and Dr. Manmohan Singh Ji announced the nuclear deal. And that changed everything. It unlocked the potential of our relationship. It put the past in the past. And it has taken many years to realize that. But that goes to the point I made earlier about how well built out things are. When I went to India this past week, or really yesterday, I met with Ministers Jaishankar, Goyal, Vaishnav, Pradhan. I met with a whole raft of secretaries. I also met the Niti Aayog chairman, Mr. BVR Subramaniam, also the chief of defense staff and others. It's amazing how constructive dialogue with India is these days. It's amazing how much our governments are doing together. If you look at the strategic and technological convergence between the United States and India, it is unimaginable compared to when I was a kid. We have come so far, and it's important to honor the work of thousands of people in both governments, Indian Americans, who have helped bring us to where we are today. Friends, I would say also that it's really important to note how much India is changing. I have a friend, he's one of the gurus of the Foreign Service. He's actually arguably now the dean of American Foreign Service officers who have worked on India. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in a small town in Tamil Nadu in 1970 to 1972. And the other day he was talking about how there's this new fast highway that's going around his village, and that he would like to go and see with his own eyes the changes in that village in rural Tamil Nadu. And I said, Don, the changes in India are unbelievable. Unbelievable when you think about what we have seen in our lifetimes. Digital payments bridge, 5G, 6G stack, the roads, the ports, the airports, the harbors, the fact that people's lives have improved so much. Electricity, hi Seema, how are you? Nice to see you. Electricity, I didn't experience a brownout or a cutout in my entire 9 days in India. When I was a kid in Panipat, coming in from Africa with my parents for my dad to see his mother, we didn't have power from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day so that the electricity could go to the factories. Not one power cut. I mean, the changes I've seen in India in my life are just unbelievable and impressive. And so what we need to do now is push the accelerator pedal. US and India have to achieve escape velocity. That was a shloka given to me by a friend who's an official in the White House. He said, Atul, it's time to talk about escape velocity. Now, what does that mean? In Washington, and here we are in the very cradle of our democracy, in Washington there's a shortage of consensus. And yet there is strong bipartisan consensus about the US-India relationship. And there is strong bipartisan consensus that it is vital to our strategic and economic needs. Friends, I'm a lifelong practitioner of advancing the national security of my country. I'm telling you, there's nothing more important for Washington than to work on this relationship with India. And that White House official backed me up. Escape velocity. So how do we do that? We need to rebuild American prowess in building and manufacturing things. We need to sharpen our leading edge on the advanced technologies that will shape our future. We have to worry about strategic competition and being better and more efficient at delivering public goods to our peoples in the great democracies. The Chamber and our Council have worked very closely with President Biden's administration on these things. I was privileged to help launch the initiative on critical and emerging technologies at the U.S. Chamber with Secretary Raimondo and with the two national security advisors. We appreciate the CHIPS and Science Act. We appreciate the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We appreciate the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. These are innovations by government to drive things forward, and we will do everything we can to support them. However, as the voice of industry, we've also told the administration where we think they need to be even more ambitious. We believe that high standards trade with trusted partners like India is critical to the success, well-being, and happiness of the American people. How are we going to hit the $500 billion target if we don't address that? We believe that business-to-business ties with India are directly creating good jobs for the American middle class. All around this country, go see what Indian companies are doing in our country to upskill Americans, to prepare them for the future of work, to make sure that even in rural areas, people have the high-quality jobs that they need. USIBC members are the engines of growth in both countries. I could go on and on about this, but I know that time is limited. One example, the $50 billion deal between Air India and Boeing is going to create 1 million jobs across 44 states in the United States of America. One deal by one company. Think about how much our 200 companies are doing to build that entire relationship and to put rocket fuel into building out the prosperity and happiness of the American and Indian people. President Biden himself has highlighted how many jobs that deal created, and many of them are going to be key to the prosperity of many underserved places in the United States. The other day, Ambassador Sandhu and I helped inaugurate a facility in Manassas run by a company called Granules. You wouldn't believe it, Granules makes billions of pills every year that we all consume for our health and well-being. They make acetaminophen for a major company in the United States. This is an Indian investment into a high-quality manufacturing facility in Manassas, Virginia. In March, Indian tech company Wipro opened a new headquarters in East Brunswick, New Jersey, creating even more jobs in IT services. This year, U.S.-India trade crossed $190 billion. That's not $500 billion, but it's robust growth after the pandemic. And let me say to you that the pandemic may have been a cruel master, but it taught us that democracies, however we are complicated and problematic in our processes, at the end of the day, democracies take care of their people, and democracies can trust each other, and the pandemic reinforced the bonds of trust and affection between the American and Indian people. As India grows, in fact booms, and I have never seen anywhere growing as fast as India, it is clear that it is going to help fuel not only India's prosperity, it is going to fuel America's prosperity in the 21st century. So my charge to this entire room is, let's be more ambitious. Let's demand more of our governments. Let's expect more liberalization of trade and investment in both directions. The happiness of our people is at stake. Friends, India's economic rise is going to be one of the happiest and greatest stories of the 21st century. The United States will complement that rise because we have a demographic advantage, we have an immigration and entrepreneurship engine in our country, and we have vision, hope, and I think great commitment to the future happiness of the United States. Make in India will help complement that, and so will Make in America. In a way, it ensures that we have the muscle and sinews and robust strength to power the world to greater happiness and greater freedom. USIBC is committed to that. Our members are committed to that. The U.S. Chamber is committed to that. I want to thank you all for your attention. Wish you a great day and good success. Thank you.